This episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast is proudly brought to you by Lifetime Decoys. Lifetime Decoys has set the new standard in decoy rigging equipment. Their signature, patent-pending designs use PVC-coated steel cable to prevent rust and corrosion, allow virtually zero line memory, while providing UV resistance and incredible strength and durability. Unlike monofilament, steel cable won't coil up and tangle with other lines because of excessive line memory. Their swivels and clips are made of high-quality stainless steel, and their aluminum ferrules are hydraulically pressed, providing unsurpassed strength. These materials combine to form the strongest, longest-lasting, and most tangle-proof decoy rigging equipment on the market today. They're also the only manufacturer who offers a warranty of 3 years as well as a money-back satisfaction guarantee. Check out Lifetime Decoys today at lifetimedecoys.com. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 109. This week on the show, we're joined by 2018 World Goose Calling Champion, Kile Jones. All right, welcome to the 109 episode of HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Palm, and we're your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. Check us out at hpoutdoors.com. If you're new to the show, you can find our podcast across all the great podcast directories out there, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all the good ones. You can also head over to hpoutdoors.com and find all the past episodes there. A bunch of other information about the show. Find some good pictures of my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up?
Did you know Leonardo da Vinci could write with one hand while drawing with the other?
I did not know that.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. It is really impressive, actually. I guess that would make him ambidextrous. Is that the right term?
Yeah, well, it seems like it would be something more to be able to do it with both hands at the same time.
Interesting.
Maybe I'll save that for next week.
Good stuff.
Here's another thing, too, that I found this interesting that could come to it's useless knowledge, but you might use it if you ever find yourself outside of a cave. Bats always turn left while they exit a cave.
Can't imagine when in my life that would be useful to know, but I'm glad that I've got that to stick away somewhere there, big guy. Appreciate you.
You know what? Ace Ventura probably thought the same thing. And there's guano.
That's something I never thought we'd reference on the show, but yet here we are. Okay. If you'd also like to hear and read other useless references from Dan, you can chat with him directly in the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast listeners group on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those social media platforms. You can hit us up on there. Before we get too far into the show, I want to take a minute this week to thank Dunn's Sporting Goods. Dunn's is a family-owned and operated business with 2 locations in Peabody, Missouri and Marion, Illinois. They have over 60 years dedicated to providing the outdoorsman with the best deals on hunting and fishing gear. Check out their selection at shopduns.com as well as on Facebook and Instagram at shopduns for their weekly specials and giveaways. They've also created a special discount for the listeners of our show. Use the discount code HPO to save 10%. Some restrictions do apply. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. About the only creature that they can't deceive is you. Lucky Duck's more than a brand. It's a lifestyle built around the subtle art of critter deception. While you're focused on the business end of your shotgun or rifle, know that they're completely focused on what matters most, you. Whether you're in a duck blind, dove field, on a predator stand, or chasing turkeys, they're confident that their products will help you succeed. Check out their full lineup at luckyduck.com. Keep up with the latest news by following them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. 737 Duck Calls, original design, select grade components, superior sound, and unparalleled service. 737 takes exceptional pride in producing the finest quality, best built premium calls in the market today. They're made in America and they're offered only direct to consumer through their website. Shipping in the U.S. is always free, and international orders are also now available online. A 20-day money-back guarantee and a lifetime warranty accompany every call purchased. 737 duck calls lead the flock. Gunner Kennel is engineered for your dog and designed for travel and your peace of mind. The G1 Kennel has set a new industry standard and put Gunner Kennels in a category all its own. Gunner was started to protect your pet, and it continues to be at the center of everything that they do. Gunner Kennels are dedicated to building the best and safest pet travel crate on the market. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. Check out their G1 series of kennels and accessories at gunnerkennels.com. Also, thank you to Onyx Hunt. Onyx Hunt allows you to confidently navigate public and private land boundaries across the country. The Hunt app turns your smartphone into a fully functional GPS with more than 450 countrywide maps that give clear private and public land boundaries, trails, hunting-specific data, and more. Listeners of our show can receive a 20% discount on the Hunt app, either the premium or the elite membership, when you use the discount code HPOWPS at onxmaps.com. Also, thank you to Camp Chef and Black Rifle Coffee Company. Say it every week, but please support the companies that support our show. To make that a little bit easier for you to do, head over to hpoutdoors.com, check out the discount codes tab, find out how you can save at Dunn Sporting Goods, Black Rifle Coffee Company, White Rock Decoys, 737 Duck Calls, Alpha Dog Nutrition, Gunner Kennels, The Ridge Wallet, and Onyx Hunt. Some great savings available there, and make sure you take advantage. All right, Dan, this week we are joined by the new 2018 World Goose Calling Champion, Kile Jones, fresh off of his win. This is Tuesday that we recorded this, so literally like 2 days after he's won, so kind of sinking in. But, you know, this is kind of one of those things that is sort of a monumental moment, particularly in a competition caller's career as a World Goose Champion. And it's going to be cool to talk to him about his experience and kind of how he feels about it, and how he plans to maybe defend that title next year.
Yeah, we talk about it a little bit, but it's just the amount of practice, and not just practice. And I know it's like a whatever you want to call it, but like the perfect practice and really breaking it down. And it goes back to our conversation we had with Kile, and he's very, very meticulous on every single aspect. And it's funny, talking to Kyle, and he even mentions that, they broke it down together and going back through it, and it's a proven system. So it's really cool. Great conversation. And, I think he's going to be a force for a couple more years. So we'll see in 2019, but I think he'll be right back up there. And I actually saw on callingducks.com, he was ranked number 4 going into this weekend, I believe. So, so good for him, man.
Yeah.
Coming from, the outside the box a little bit and then getting a championship. That's awesome.
Yeah. And he was, I shot him a message on Sunday, I believe. And, he fired right back and was like, yeah, man, let's do it. So super cool that he jumped on with us so quick after winning. And we're excited to welcome to the show. So let's go ahead and do that and get Kile on the line. All right, we are excited to welcome the newly minted 2018 World Goose Calling Champ, Kile Jones, to the show. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you guys?
Doing great. Probably not doing quite as well as you. Probably not doing quite as well as you are right now.
Yeah. Still kind of setting in, and probably haven't stopped smiling since Saturday. So
I bet.
It's been pretty cool. So.
I bet, man, and rightly so. I was going to ask you this. We were just chatting, and I was going to ask you this before we got started recording, but I wanted to hold off because we tend to ask some of our best questions we ask before we start recording, and we tend to miss it. So I didn't want to do that. But when you win the World Goose Calling Championship, they give you a goose decoy is kind of like the trophy, right? And it's one that is pretty pretty infamous. People kind of, if you're familiar with the contest and stuff, you know what that decoy looks like. And I got to ask you, is it anything like the Stanley Cup where like you take it out and I can't imagine you'd hunt over it, but like, do you do anything cool with it, or is it just one of those things where you bring it home and it ends up on the shelf?
Man, it's on the shelf right now, but I can tell you I held it like a football, I held it like a running back, walking through the airport and on the shuttle today. I felt like, like the old PGA commercial with Jordan Spieth, and he had that big trophy that he carried around. I had it on my lap the whole time on the way home on that plane. So, but right now, no, it's just on the shelf, and it'll just sit there. Try not to have it collect too much dust, but yeah, man. But
I think what Josh meant to ask, like Ovechkin was chugging beers out of the Stanley Cup. I don't think there's any spot to put a beer in the cup, but
I mean, it'd be pretty wild to go out and use it, but man, I couldn't take it and do anything with that. It's yeah.
Josh, are you saying that you Josh, would you drill holes in it like a shot ski or something? Is that what you were alluding to?
No, I wasn't trying to imply that, it should turn into some sort of like drinking game or some drinking debauchery. I was merely saying, it's just it's one of those trophies that, like, as a competition caller, I feel like, again, maybe I'm wrong here, but, I'm not a competition caller, but I sort of associate, the World Goose Calling Championship, as the pinnacle of the goose calling world, and, the world, duck down in Stuttgart is kind of like the pinnacle of that. And, if I won those, like, I would be so excited that I would just, I just didn't know. Maybe there was some sort of like, secret thing that the guys do with the trophies after they win that you don't get to see, much. I don't know if there was like a tradition or something like that, but I certainly can appreciate not wanting to destroy it, and it's not quite as robust as the Stanley Cup. So I mean, you gotta be gentle with it, but nonetheless, it's a cool trophy, and there's not a whole lot of guys out there that have those sitting on their shelf at home. So definitely a cool thing.
Oh yeah, I could tell you right now, if it was a cup, probably would have had a few adult beverages poured in it on Saturday night and drink out of it for sure.
See, and there's the answer. That's what he was going for.
See, here's the thing. I think that the easy answer here would be to take the call that was used for the championship routine and somehow plug it up and pour shots into it and drink shots out of that guy all night. That'd be the way to go.
That'd work. That would be that would be pretty interesting for sure.
So Kyle, it looks like a Job's carving. Is that who carves those decoys out?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I believe it's Charles Job.
Is it Charles? Okay. Yeah, they're pretty similar. Beautiful decoys. So, before we got on here, when someone sees you up on a stage, no disrespect, but you look like a younger guy. You know what I mean? You're a good-looking guy up there. And I'm looking at, callingducks.com. Your first win was like 2007. You won the Junior World in 2008. Is that correct?
Yep.
From what they're saying. So, I mean, you've been around for a while. When did you start actually getting onto the scene? And, you did win in 2007 was your first win. So how long did it take you, and what really got you motivated to get up on stage?
2007 was my first goose calling contest. I'd actually just moved to Michigan. In Michigan, no disrespect, but they don't have the duck numbers that where I moved from Washington to Michigan, so they didn't have the duck numbers that I was used to. So it's like, well, if you want to waterfowl hunt, you get into Canada goose hunting, and until you really figure out, the duck hunting, there. So I got really, really big into Canada goose hunting in the state of Michigan, and a guy that was, I had met through the waterfowl, just waterfowl hunting in general, talking to him at like a DU banquet. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to goose call, like, not just like like just the honks and stuff like that. He really taught me, the notes, the sit notes, the trains, the clutch, everything, the whole goose vocabulary. And he's like, man, you're getting really, really good. And I was like 14, about to turn 15. And he's like, man, you're getting really, really good. You should enter a goose calling contest. And so 2007 was my very, very first goose calling contest. And then, and that was, I didn't really plan on getting as deeply involved in the calling contest that I did. But getting up there and kind of just the camaraderie was a big part of it. But the just the rush that you get from getting on that stage was cool. And I went to a few more contests, and guys were like, man, you're getting pretty good. And then I started traveling around to a couple in Illinois and stuff like that, and made some really, really great friends, and they encouraged me to go to the World in Maryland, in Eastern Maryland in 2008. And was fortunate enough to win the Junior World there. And then ever since then, man, it's kind of just built and escalated to, something bigger, so it's been pretty cool. So, 2007 was the first goose calling contest, and then, won a Junior World title in 2008, and then have been at it ever since, man. It's been a long journey, but it's been fun, so it's been cool growing up and in the calling contest circuit and watching kind of everybody grow up, and watching the guys that you look up to where they end up, and the guys that are younger than you where you end up, and the guys that you call against in juniors where they go to, so it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I got to ask you, so, you've been doing this for a while, and, I want to talk about, this year specifically at the World Goose. You come into this show and, or this contest, and I mean, as an outsider that follows this stuff kind of on social media and, that kind of thing, I felt like I've seen you in reference to contests and calling and stuff like that a lot more in the last, several months and maybe even year or two. You just kind of like feeling like you were gaining a lot of momentum. So like when I saw that you had won, like it wasn't shocking to me that, to see that. But I'm curious, how do you kind of ramp up to a point where you're, able to go to a World Goose Calling Championship and win? Because I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm going to make an assumption here, but I'm assuming that all goose calling competitions aren't the same. I mean, I don't know that to be certain, but I mean, assuming that you're competing at the highest level here in Maryland and against the best of the best, how does it differ? Like, how do you prepare yourself for a contest like that versus like a contest at like a Rogers or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so with Rogers and the summertime, that's the most amount of calling contests that you're going to see throughout the year, is August through September. And, just getting on stage really, really helps with not only just getting you stage time, but it helps with building confidence and your ability to, blow routine. And throughout those contests, you're able to go in the world. There's some guys that are retired from the world calling, the world Goose, like right. Hunter Grounds, Robbie Iverson, right. Wade Walling, those guys. So you're able to go in those contests in the summertime. You're able to go against those guys because they're wanting to go to Rogers, and I mean Rogers paid out a ton of money. Presley's paid out a ton of money. Ballard County, Kentucky, that contest paid out a ton of money. So you're able to go and kind of, you're able to perfect your craft throughout the summertime, and it helps you gain confidence, or, you know, it can also, if you're not doing so hot, it can also take away from that, because you're seeing how you stack up against those guys, and if you're stacking up against the best of the best, then it just helps with so much confidence going into Easton. But I mean, there's really, and you know, I had a young guy go with me this year, but there's really nothing that prepares you for that world contest, because like once you step on that stage, and especially finals night, you know, all the lights are off except for the ones that are, you know, shining right down on you, and it's you up there and in front of the whole auditorium, and there's nothing really that can prepare you for that other than, you know, just being there before, you know, the year before or however many years before, because you don't know what it feels like. You know, you'll never know what it feels like to step on that stage until you really, and that's, you know, just having that confidence and knowing how it feels to be in that situation is what can help you later on. But, you know, practicing, you know, I think, man, I didn't put a call down. There's quite a bit of practice that would involve, but, you know, just trying to perfect your craft from, you know, the end of July all the way up until, you know, Saturday night of World.
You know,
really the only way to
let me ask you a question about that. Let me ask you a question about that practice, because, you know, following you on social media, you know, I see you put out a lot of, you know, Instagram stories and stuff like that, and you're in this room with all the black like sound foam around you, and I've, you know, seen the videos when power calls came out and stuff, and you know, you're in this room. Like, tell me what this room is like. I just, in my mind, I'm like, this is like the secret like beat laboratory that's in some like underground bunker that holds all the secrets, and these dudes just go in there and just rip on calls all day. And I'm like, where is this place and how do I get there?
Yeah. So we've actually got two rooms like that. One is upstairs and the other one's downstairs. Downstairs is like, that's like the dungeon. That's like, if I need a tune, they're just our tuning rooms, really. So it's just a soundproof board, or soundproof foam on the wall. So that way nobody wants to physically hurt us by hearing all these tune calls for that amount of time. So the one downstairs is really like, it's almost like a dungeon, man. That's for the days that you tune 100 calls or something like that, and you just need to go at it and not have any distractions or anything like that. And the other one was designed for just for like whenever customers come in and we're able to tune their call with them sitting there, or, you know, if they want to come buy a call, we can tune it how they like it. Yeah, those rooms are actually, I really don't like calling in those ones, because it really kills your sound. So like whenever we have this big showroom and it echoes, like, it sounds exactly like identical to what the Easton Auditorium sounds like at Worlds. Mm-hmm. And so I never practiced anywhere else except for that showroom, just because, Rogers, Presley, Ballard County, all those contests, it was like, okay, those are contests, but the one that I want to focus on is that one in November. So I want it to sound, I want to know what my call sounds like, how my routine sounds. I recorded every single one, you know, and I wanted to know how it sounded in that type of environment where you got a lot of echo, you got a lot of reverb. But, you know, the soundproof room where guys walk in there like, holy crap, like, close the door and you start calling, and there's no sound that is out whatsoever. It's like you can hear what that call sounds like that you're blowing, like, just because it's right there. But if it would sound completely different, you know, in there versus going in that showroom and blowing it, or going outside and blowing it, it's wild, man. It's really wild.
You know, I wanted to swing back a little bit and just talk about, we had Scott Trinan on not too long ago, and just talking about competition calling and And he was saying, I know so many callers, but like you even mentioned, once you get up on that stage, it's a totally different ball game. And just the lights go off except for on you. And, the closest thing I can imagine that being to is like getting up in front of a class and giving a speech, and just that little bit that, that little bit of anxiety or a little bit of nervousness that might, close your throat up a little bit, like that could really hurt you in a competition stage. So I mean, I just go back to all the social media, and I have to laugh when you read all those memes that, talking about, I don't, I kill my judges or whatever it is, but that, those all make me laugh. But, I do want to talk about your workplace, and, Kelly was one of the first people that we interviewed on this show 4 years ago. I think he was our first interview. And, what kind of influence has he had on you? And, I know that his practice routine was totally crazy and intense if you're not in that side of the world. So, I have to imagine that he's been a pretty positive player on your end.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, he once I start, I've known Kelly, well, since, he was one of the judges whenever I won my junior world. And so, I've known him since I was 15 years old. And then once I started working for him, man, it was like a few days after I started there, it was like, okay, how can we do this? How can we improve my routine to, potentially be a world champion? And he's been, he's such a, you guys know, he's such a humble and awesome individual, but him, he just really, really wanted to help, and he focused a lot of time and energy on helping me build my routine in what his opinion was a perfect routine. He's, it's been a lot, we break it down into sections. It's like, perfect this section, then here's a transition, perfect that transition, there's the next section, perfect it. It wasn't like there's a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of recordings, and everything like that, but he really took me under his wing and influenced my calling style, and kind of showed me the ins and outs and taught me the ins and outs of the whole mental game. Like, he's like, man, you can do everything on a goose call that any you can do that, but we're gonna take that, harness it, and then we're gonna utilize all of those tools, and then we're gonna throw this mental aspect into it, where there's so much more to it, where you can walk up on stage and you can, you're grabbing the judge's attention just from your warm up, or just, it just like little things of that. A lot of people and a lot of guys don't think about it at first, because they're just wanting to build a great routine. And he's going through the whole spectrum of making sure you're showcasing everything to them, and really perfecting it, and making sure that flow is right, making sure that, there's not a note in a transition that sounds like, there's a huge, I had a kind of like a mental block on one of my sequences that I was doing. He's like, man, it sounds like you're messing up every single time to me. And I wasn't getting docked for it by judges or anything like that. Like, Kelly is just basically, he's a perfectionist, and was really, really just, it ended up, rubbing off on me, and making sure that I wanted to be, whenever I walked up on stage, that I had everything in my back pocket, that I knew, the whole mental game was there, the confidence was there, the ability to finish a routine was there too. It's been very cool to learn from him, and to have him take me under his wing. It's something I'm very, very fortunate for.
So when you go up there on stage for this contest, and he's the MC, so he's kind of like introducing everybody and all that kind of stuff, Does that
Yep.
help having kind of like a familiar, friendly face up there? Like, I just remember, like in high school and in college sporting events and stuff, if I could look somewhere and see somebody that I, like my parents or some, a mentor, somebody that like, when they look at you, you kind of like, like, all right, man, I got this, like I know he knows what I've done to prepare for this kind of deal. Like, does it help you when you get ready to cut loose and you know it's him up there as a friendly face, or you just kind of locked in at that point and don't really notice who it is?
Man, I'll be honest with you. Like it helps that he's up there because I know that he is technically. I mean, he's not technically a judge, but he's still taking note for every single caller on what he thinks they should be working on their routine and stuff like that. But at that point, by the time I walk up there and, go to do my thing, it's like kind of, I'm kind of more in the zone than anything. So I know that he's listening and I can trust his opinion on what to work on, what to improve on, or if I mess up, or if he thought anything sounded bad, I can trust it on that. But at that point, it's kind of one of those where it's like, okay, here's what I go do. I look at the light, and I don't really take my eyes off the light until I'm walking off the stage. So it's kind of one of those things where you're just locked in and ready to roll.
So Kelly's like the Mr. Miyagi of goose calling now. That's pretty awesome. Get your your tunes right, get your mind right. He's all about it. So that's pretty awesome. Let me ask you. All right, so you moved to Michigan and you did your junior up there. First question would be when did you move down to Paducah, and then how much did you improve after you started working with Kelly and, being in the same office as Brooke and other world champions, just the mental aspect of that? Did you see a big improvement in your game there?
Oh man. I didn't go to Easton from 2012 to 2016. So 2016 was my first year back there. And that was the first year blowing a power call, and I was lucky enough. I was up there in the final round. But once I moved to Paducah, which I moved down here in 2017, April 2017. It was like a huge jump. It was like, okay, this. In my mind, without trying to sound too arrogant or anything like that, it went from being a guy that could be in the top 5 to one of those like annual, this is a sure shot, if I blow clean and then I'll be up there, and absolutely not trying to sound arrogant or anything like that, but it's like it was just a confidence of working with him and making sure that there's that perfected routine in there. It was a huge help to my calling to be mentored in that way, and it's really helped. Absolutely.
So when you go into this, you mentioned obviously you're blowing a power call, but like, how do you go into identifying like the call setup that you like, as far as, the way you shave your reed or whatever, if you do that, the type of call, like just talk us through a little bit about that selection process and kind of how you fine tune to get sort of that sweet spot.
Yeah, no, that's been something that has, like last year, I was a little bit higher pitched than what I was wanting to sound like. But I also blew. We have titanium guts, and that's what I was blowing out there, which they're great guts, but the sound that I wanted was a little bit deeper. I wanted a more full goose, and I switched to the acrylic gut. And that was kind of what gave me that deeper full goose. And then I went with a full reed versus a shaved reed because, a shaved reed it's going to be easier to blow. With contests, you're putting so much pressure and air through the call that you can, rip or tear or crack the reed or bubble your reed easier. And it just doesn't give you that deep, that full sound that you want, especially indoors. And that, helping, it really helped practicing in that showroom that we have because I could hear it and then I would record it and I'd be like, okay, that sounds too high pitched, a little bit deeper, a little bit more full. That full goose sound is what we're wanting. And if we could find that, then we could fine tune it if I need to go a little bit deeper, a little bit higher pitched. We just want that really, really full sound because once you go indoors, everything is going to sound higher pitched. And same thing, you get out in a tent, it sounds completely, I could blow a goose call that sounded awesome out in a tent and you take it inside and it sounds awful. It's one of those deals where you need to always prepare your call for that inside scenario just because it just has so many different variables. But I know some guys run a shaved reed, but they're also that's just their different style of calling. But I prefer a full reed with a full goose sound. And yeah, it needs to be a little bit deeper, especially for that contest.
So is your warm up out? Like, are you guys outside and like under tents and getting ready to go inside and do your routine? Is that how it's set up down there?
At the World contest, it's all the World Waterfowl Calling Championships has always been at the Easton High School in Easton, Maryland. And so they've got us in there's the auditorium and then there's like a hallway, and then off of that hallway there's like another split little dead end hallway, and we all kind of gather in there. It's technically called the bullpen. But then they've got a bunch of like chairs and stuff in there, and we kind of gather in there and then go into the auditorium, which means the auditoriums are designed, they're designed for acoustics. So it's really cool to hear. I get every time I talk about calling inside the auditorium, I get goosebumps, and it's just a very, very cool sound. The echoes and everything like that. It's awesome.
So I want to ask you a question about competition calling just in general.
Okay.
When I think about competition calling, I'm trying, not having done it and just kind of knowing about it from the periphery, I'm not really apt to answer this question. So that's why I'm going to ask you, what is the status or like the health of competition calling? Are you seeing more people coming to competition calling? In your opinion, are the best days of competition calling ahead of us, or are they behind us? Because, I look at the names that so often get associated with duck and goose calling both alike. And the names that you hear like Kelly Powers and, Hunter Grounds and Tim Grounds and, Scott Trinan and Sean Stahl and guys like that. And there's a bunch of others. You've mentioned others as well. There's a long line of guys that have done it really well for a really long time. And it seems like today, at least for me, it's like, are kids more motivated to pick up a goose call than they are an Xbox controller? Or like, what's kind of driving kids to get into this and sort of start at that youth level like you did and work their way up? So you tell me, is competition calling, are its better days ahead of us, or are they behind us, do you think?
Man, I wish they were ahead of us, and that's just me speaking the truth. I really, really wish they were ahead of us because over, since 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, right in there, it's just started really going down. unfortunately, and I mean, I remember talking to like guys like Hunter and Wade and guys like, Kelly, and they're talking about how, there's a goose calling contest every single weekend, and there was and it paid out $1,000, $1,500, $5,000. It was cool to hear all these stories, but also kind of like depressing because you're just like, man, like there was a contest every single weekend back in the day, and there was 45 to 50 callers in it every single contest.
Man.
And so, the largest, I think it was like the third or fourth year I'd been at World Goose. It was 1 year it was the largest, or the most callers that I had seen in that contest, and it's like 31 or 30. And then the first in 2016, I want to say it was like 17. And it's a world, and it's so sad to see because you're just like, man, that's the big one, and there's just less. I don't know what's going on. If kids are just like, it's just whatever. You see the memes going around like I kill my judges, blah blah blah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we crack. I don't know if I hope that it grows. I feel like we're kind of at a point where, we got to do something in order to keep it growing and to introduce more folks to it, or we're going to lose it. And it's just going to be like, okay, like whatever, it's sad. There's a lot of young guys in it. But I'll be the first to say that the young guys in it, and it's top heavy with talent. And I think that really, really, I think it really, really discourages some kids, because you got a guy that goes around to every contest in the summertime, and he's a 14-year-old kid or a 15-year-old kid, and he wins every single time because he's really, really good. But then those other kids that are there, I mean, they either, I think it's like a little bit, it might be a little bit softer generation of younger guys where they don't, whenever I was younger, if I lost a contest or if I took second, third, or even if I won, there was always that drive to improve, like, okay, he got me this time, I want to get him next time. And there's a lot of that with the callers, like the senior callers now, because that's how it was back then. But with the younger guys, you don't really see that anymore, and it's kind of sad to see, So I would say that, to answer your question, man, I would say unfortunately it is, it was the golden age of waterfowling or contest calling is a little bit behind us, but it's on us to hopefully try and bring it back.
Yeah, I think there's it's tough because you would think that money would bring a lot more people into it, and like you said, Rogers and a few other ones, they paid out a lot of money, and I know just from following Shanahan, I think he called some people out and just said, these are paying out like $10,000 or $15,000 to the winner. Was one that big? I think one might have been that big, and he said, where are all the guys at? And he name dropped a few, and I think they were already guiding maybe, or getting close to working or something. So, they had other things to do, but still, I mean, $10,000 or $15,000 to go to a competition when you're the top of the top and should be, pulling guys in, that is tough. And that's a long road for you guys to, kind of recruit. But my next question for you, and I know that I asked Kelly this because it was kind of my thing back when we started. I always asked, as a world champion caller, when you guys are out hunting, would you rather have a call or motion in your spread? And my question to you is, what's it like hunting with the Higdon guys and the Power Calls guys when you all get in a blind together? I doubt that there's any birds coming in that are not being called to.
it's tough, man. I mean, it's not tough, you know. It's not like hard or anything. It's because there's sometimes where we're just like, man, you know, we really got on them that time, and they didn't do anything. So it can be the best of both worlds, and it can be so frustrating at times too, because it's like, man, we tried everything we could, and then we tried not calling, and we tried no motion, you know, and it's just it's a mixture, man. It really is. I know that Kelly and I've hunted a few times now, to where, especially when we're goose calling, it's gotten to where we're really working together as team, like just like, you know, calling together versus trying to call over each other. You know, and whenever we get a few guys in there in the deep line, it's kind of like we're kind of all alpha dogs, you know, and we're always, you know, kind of trying to get one ahead of the other one, you know. So it can be, like I said, it can be the best of both worlds. I mean, we've got down here, it's a little different from what I'm used to in Michigan. In Michigan, I was kind of the guy that I was really the only guy calling. And now, you know, everybody's very proficient on both duck and goose calls. So it's easy. It makes it nice because you're like, okay, you know, I can rely on guys to be like, you know, we can work together. Or I know that if they're reading them and I'm reading them, then it's going to be easy to work them, because we're not having to worry about some guy, you know, ducks at, you know, 70 yards that are cuffed up and coming in, and we don't have to worry about some guy highballing or and hitting them with like a comeback or something, you know. It's pretty nice, man. It's pretty nice. So, but I mean, if you had to ask me, what would you rather have? Well, going back to your question that you asked Kelly, the motion or the calling, man. Oh, I mean, I'm a firm believer in less is more with calling. Like I'm very hesitant, or not hesitant, but I'm very, you know, relaxed when I'm calling. Whenever I see birds, I'm not hitting them. And I would actually rather have a little bit of motion in the spread versus, you know, vocalization. Because I'm a firm believer that, I mean, if you never see ducks or geese sitting still in the water unless there's really something wrong. You know, they're paused or something like that. So they're moving around. Those are happy ducks. Those are happy geese. And that can go a long way, especially when you talk flagging or, you know, spinning wing decoy or anything like that, or ripples on the water. I think that's a lot louder per se versus, you know, some calling, you know. Now, I mean, it can also be the opposite too. I mean, it just depends on every situation, really, with the reading the birds. And, you know, sometimes especially with competition next to you, or, you know, like if a guy were hunting the next field over, or trying to downwind you, or trying to run traffic right next to you, man, that can really pay off to be an extremely proficient caller. You know, that can read the birds correctly. So yeah, motion for sure, absolutely, motion, and then calling for sure, man.
It's funny because Dan used to ask that question to everybody on the show, and
yeah,
I went it really, I mean, and literally I don't know if anyone ever answered calling. It was always motion, it seems like.
No, I think we're 100% with motion. And I mostly asked it to, in my defense, it was mostly to world champion callers, just because it goes to show how important motion is.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, it really resonated to me, though, when I went and saw a seminar that Field Hudnall did. And he was talking, and he was like, you know, I feed my family selling calls, and I'll tell you that calling is not the most important thing when you're out there, you know, hunting waterfowl. And it's like, you know, to have it put out like that, it's like, all right, you know, you can't really argue with that. And it is fun. It is interesting though, because so often when I'm hunting and I'm just hunting next to like, average Joes out there, if you see ducks flying up the river, you can tell where the hunters are, because it's like the hail call comes out, man. And it's like, you just hear it going up the river, and it's like, everyone's trying that and the ducks aren't responding at all. And it's like, you got to do something different and mix it up. And a lot of times motion or, one thing that we've talked about too, along with the motion and not just like the spinning wing or the motion on the water, is when birds are overhead and they can see the water is actually disturbed under the ducks. Like they've been down in their feet. And I feel like that is a really sort of a next level technique. If you can get that water churned up underneath them, so it looks like they've been down in there digging around and stuff. I think that's another next level element to that.
Absolutely. And with all the advancements in technology, with, drones and everything, I mean, we get up there and we can see, how far away ducks can see the decoys, but then how far away they can see, well, from our point of view with the camera, we can see how far away we can see the motion of the decoys, how far away we can see the decoys, or even like, I mean, we had a blaster, in front of the blind, and we go kick up water or kick up dirt in front of it, and then that blaster blows that dirt all through the timber hole. I mean, it's amazing, how much better you can see those duck decoys and the water movement with that water, with that mud all turned up in there. You wouldn't think it would be that way, but it's really wild, because you get that muddy water, those bright, with the Higdons, we exaggerate paint schemes with a little bit brighter paint scheme, but it's like you can really, really see them so much better with that mud and that dirt, and then you add the ripples in there too, man. Like that, dude, it's pretty killer. The difference it can make, for sure.
Man. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, this is Tuesday night, so we're 3 days after your championship win, or 2 days after your championship. Where do you go from here as far as your practicing and, just, keeping the foot on the gas, so to speak?
To be honest, man, I soaked it. I'm still trying to soak it in a little bit, because it's kind of one of those things where it's been something I've wanted since 2008. Once I've got a young guy I've been working with, and he's a phenomenal caller. He actually won the Junior Worlds, and I told him, as soon as I hand you that goose, never forget the weight of that goose decoy, that Job's decoy, whenever it hits your hand there, and you're the Junior World Calling Champion or the World Calling Championship, because you're going to always want to feel that again. And, there's been a little bit of talk on the internet and everything like that. And I can tell you that there's, 2 more world championships that I would like to try to win, and then a champion of champions. And it, I kind of didn't call for one day, but I've blown a few routines and I've already started practicing again, just because, it's one of those where you've got some confidence and you've got some momentum, and you want to keep it going and try to just do the best you can and get another. That's really, it's looking at the next contest, and that one World 2019 is already circled on the calendar again.
Ooh-wee.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that. I think the way that they set up the World Championship and how they kind of like force you to retire after you win it 3 times, I think that's just kind of a unique thing that they have there, and that's cool to hear you say that you're that you want to pursue that. And actually, as I was sitting here thinking about this, when you were answering that question, I was thinking about when I asked you about kind of like the heyday of calling and of competition calling and stuff like that, and I kind of thought about something. I wanted to run this by you as a guy that spends a lot of time at shows, and you guys are out on the road promoting product and kind of feeling the waterfowl community across the country through competitions and things. One of the things that I've heard a lot about, and I've kind of witnessed it in some of our shows here locally, is, lack of attendance and lack of interest in outdoor shows in general. Some of the ones that I've known of have either gone away or significantly scaled or kind of like done some other things. And, my guess is that with the internet and the availability of information at your fingertips today, people are less excited to go out and actually see product and things, when maybe in years past, that was one of your only opportunities to actually get your hands on all the stuff that Higdon or whatever company, you were looking at might have to offer at the time. And I assume that those are kind of when the competitions would marry up at the same time, having a collection of waterfowlers together at one time. So, talk a little bit about like the show circuit, and do you feel like that sort of had an impact on competition calling and, sort of that pipeline that you talked about that used to be there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and that is a very, very, true statement whenever you say that, the lack of contest calling is due to the lack of participation at these outdoor shows. I mean, there's so many that I can name off the top of my head that I've seen personally within the past 10 years just shrink, and some aren't even around anymore. And they were huge whenever I first started calling, and, there's hundreds of my favorite one of all time was the Ohio Waterfowlers Boot Camp, because it's like, there's hundreds of vendors and there's a calling contest there, or whatever calling contests are there. I mean, there used to be like 3 regionals for the World Duck, and it just, I think a lot of it has to do with, guys can go on the internet and watch a video on how to do something or how something is advertised. I mean, that's what the job of a pro staffer was. That was their job back whenever those shows were in their heyday. Was you're demonstrating the product, you're showcasing it, and you're explaining how well it works and what type of situations, and guys can just go right on the Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook or whatever and see it. And I think that has to do a lot with those shows dying down. And I can tell you that the shows, most of the time we go to these shows, whether it's at a dealer or just a waterfowl expo or something like that, anytime we set up that pool, because we travel around, we've got a pool we fill up, it takes like 4 hours to fill up. It's huge. we throw the motion decoys out in there, and it is people, every single person that comes to that show stops at that pool and looks at it and is like, holy crap, like that thing, spits out a ton of water, or that thing is moving a ton of water, and they're like, oh, it's cool. And I can tell you that is, we do so much better whenever we're at a pool, and just because guys can see it firsthand. And that was my favorite part, about their shows. I could go and I could sit down with Field Hudnall, and he's at every single, him and his family, they're at all these shows. I could sit down with him and he could tune my goose call and then teach me how to do a note, or, and same with Fred Zink, same with Tim Grounds, and all those guys at these big shows. It was the best thing, because guys would, and that's what, if a guy's like, hey man, what do you recommend for a goose call? I'm like, dude, you need to get to one of these shows, or try to go to one of the shops that their actual home shop if you can, and just go there and have them tune a call for you, because they can sit there, hear you call, and see what you need. And I think that just the whole social media and internet days have kind of fizzled out the shows and contest calling. I mean, back, and I'm kind of starting to get on a little rant here, but back in the early 2000s, I mean, if you wanted to be, prove yourself to be somebody in the hunting industry, man, we didn't have the Instagram, or with the 20,000 followers or 25,000 followers. We had to go to these shows and work. We had to go to these shows and promote the products and the companies that we believed in. And if you wanted to prove yourself as a caller, you had to get up on stage and call, and that's, I remember back working Cabela's Waterfowl Classics and seeing guys like Fred and Pony and Field, those guys running to the back of the store, grabbing decoys and running up to the front and to make sure, that those guys have the decoys that they need for the season. So I think that the whole online sales thing and social media and all that stuff, man, that has a direct effect on these shows and contests for sure.
It's so funny too, because I can remember going to shows where they weren't exclusively waterfowl, right? Because I feel like to some extent the show issue is almost like a waterfowl exclusive kind of deal, because you go to some of these big big game and deer expos and stuff. I mean, I've seen grown men stand in line for like an hour to meet Michael Waddell or to meet Lee and Tiffany Lukoski, which is cool. I mean, they're like big names, right, in that space. But like at the same show, I would walk down the hall and I'd walk right up and shake Sean Mann's hand. Or I remember getting to meet Glenn Scobie, and I was like, this is cool to me, and nobody else around here cares. Like it's, there's like a handful of people in that area. And I'm just wondering why that is. Like why has it affected the waterfowl community unlike it appears that it's affected the deer and big game community to some extent? I don't know. It's just weird.
I can tell you why people stand in line to meet Tiffany.
Nice.
Yeah, I would agree with that. No, I mean, I think it, man. I think the whole thing behind that is the accessibility to do that. I mean, you look at the demographics of whitetail deer hunters, and a lot of them are in Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, everything like that. It's much, in my opinion, it's definitely a whole lot cheaper to get into.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to my dad today, and I was like, man, waterfowling is literally one of the most expensive habits you could get into, or hobbies. So I mean, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with the cost, that what it takes to do it and do it well and do it right. But I mean, at the same time, it's like all these, on TV and stuff like that. I mean, you see those guys more, and like your David Blanton and your Waddell, those guys. I mean, those guys are all over the TV. They're all in the commercials, so guys kind of associate that with that, And I remember there's, you guys have been hunting a long time and going to these shows and everything like that. But I remember whenever, guys, there'd be lines of people waiting to meet and talk to, Fred Zink, and it's like, I think it kind of had to do a lot with the area that they were in, but I don't know. I think it's looked cooler to deer hunt. It's easier to get into deer hunting than it is to get into waterfowl hunting.
I think too, from a overall standpoint, if you take a step back and look at that too, you got major sponsors sending these deer hunters to all these shows. And on the reverse side, say you have Zinc or Foils or whoever, they're there on their own dime trying to sell their product. So, once you get the travel cost in, and when they could just run a 10% sale on their website and sell and make more money, does it come down to, what is better for them and their family and everything? So it's difficult, and I can see both ways, and definitely, it would be nice to get everyone back out and really, Josh, like at the Harrisburg show, there's probably less than 10 waterfowl companies in the whole thing. So that used to be a giant waterfowl show too, right? That's in February. I mean, like there used to be,
the huge zinc booth, the huge field proven booth. I mean, there used to be a ton of waterfowl stuff that I can remember there, and that, I don't, it's just kind of disappointing to see that. But I mean, same time, the prices, the cost that it takes, for a guy like Field Hudnall, or if we were to drive from Paducah to Harrisburg, we would have to take a trailer full of stuff, and I mean, fuel and hotels. That's a week-long show, right? Or is it 2 weeks long?
2 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking hotel rooms, food, fuel for just to get out there. Then you're talking booth space. I mean, it's crazy how expensive. I mean, back then they could justify going there. A few years ago, they could justify going there because they could have a hotel room for pretty cheap, and then they could get there for pretty cheap. But then that booth space was still expensive. Now the booth space is the same price, but hotel rooms are $100 a night. And then you're talking fuel to get there is just skyrocketed too, and that has a lot to do with competition calling going down as well. With the shows, because you're talking a guy could go $1,000 goose calling contest. The guy could go there for he could drive there for $100 and then stay in a hotel for $50. And then if he won, I mean, he's still making pretty good money now. If he wants to drive, you're talking it's an 8-hour drive. That is, for my truck at least, it's close to $200 to $250 one way, and then the hotel is $100, and then $200 to $250 on the way back. And you talk food and the entry fees, man, you're looking at he's coming out even. They're close to even, So it's really, really dampened the internet and economy is really just, I mean, it's 10 times easier for a guy to go buy a pulsator on Rogers and get free shipping than it is for him to go drive to, his local store that's an hour away, and pay $129 and then not have to pay shipping. I mean, it's the same exact, it's just like that, it makes it so much easier for guys, and cheaper.
Yeah. And this is, I feel like I'm doing my old man get off my lawn thing, but it's like, while I do enjoy the ability to look at everything online and find reviews and watch videos and all that kind of stuff, part of me also hates the fact that we're taking away experiences from our kids and the next generation of waterfowlers that we got to experience. I can remember every year as a kid going with my family to the hardware store to buy our hunting licenses and just couldn't wait to take my hunter safety course so that I could finally buy my own and go with them. Now, yep. You forget your license, you buy it on the way to the blind in the front of your phone. It's just little things like that stick in, my brain. And I know a lot of people, others, that had those experiences as a kid, and I can remember going to shows and, just seeing things for the first time and really helping you develop that love for it. And I think that's part of what the issue is. It's funny, and this is a really quick side tangent, but I'm coaching my son. He's 7 years old. I'm coaching his basketball team. And one of the things they tell us as coaches, they're like, it's your responsibility to teach them how to play the game, but your number one goal is to teach them to love the game and to
yep.
want to do it more and want to be involved in it, and not just, this is how you shoot a layup, but just love the competitive nature and all of that goes with it, the camaraderie and everything. I kind of feel that's the same way with waterfowl hunting and the outdoors in general. And, yes, I can teach my kid to fish. I can teach him to put a worm on the hook, but I need, we got to find ways to connect with the next generation to have them love what we're doing. And I feel like that's kind of a challenge that you would feel in, in the competition discussion, like we've been talking. It's you can blow a goose call and sound great on it, but how do you install that passion for somebody to love it and want to just be the best they can be no matter what? And just, that drive and that, those moments that grip them and hold on to them forever. I feel like those are lost in some of the ways that we're kind of going about things these days. And it's, things that we're doing out of necessity, right? I mean, like you were talking about, it's expensive to go places and do these things, and it's getting harder and harder to do it. And it's just a shame, because I do feel like we're kind of missing a lot of those moments that a lot of us had as younger people, and that kind of helped mold us into, being passionate about the outdoors and waterfowl hunting and things like that.
Oh yeah, no, I would agree with you, man. It is, I'm not trying to sound, like the older grandpa either, man, but it is unfortunate that's just kind of the way that it's going. Like I'm in a group chat with some of the best callers in the world, and we talk about, what to do to, try to get, more kids involved in contests. Cause we're all contest callers. I think, there's a few world champions in there, and then there's a few guys that haven't even, called in a contest, but they love going to them, and it's like, how can we make this better? How can we make it bigger? How can we get more kids involved? And, one of the things we did is we got a bunch of people together and, put together it was an online contest, and I mean, it was judged just like a contest, and we got a bunch of guys, industry professionals, promotional staff guys, a couple Avery guys, a couple Higgin guys, and we created, we went out and purchased, our own stuff to give to these guys as like, as like their prizes for this calling contest. And we're like, we promoted it and we tried to get it, a little bit bigger. And at first it was like two kids that submitted and it was all for kids. So it was, 18, it was for like high school age, 13 to 18 years old. Just because we wanted to, it's right at that age where kids are super, super easy to impact, but also it's like, man, I don't know, because I don't want to look dumb, or it's also like, oh, I'm too cool for that. You know what I'm saying? So we wanted to try to get those guys in there, and we hyped up these prizes. And the first couple days it was really slow, and then a couple encouraging posts from some guys, and it was just like the floodgates open. These kids, I mean, it was so cool to see, because it was like, man, we would have not have known that all of these young guys would have posted a video of them duck calling on the internet, on Facebook, and it was really, really cool. But we're trying to do stuff like that to get more kids involved, and if it nowadays, I think if it going back to what you were saying, nowadays you can get stuff on the internet and kind of miss that experience. Well, now we're trying to go and maybe even go the route of they can have that experience kind of somewhat on the internet, and that's what the whole route we went with the contest calling online, is because it's like, man, these kids are never called in a contest before, never even posted a video of them duck calling, and it's something that they thought, they jumped in and did because we had a sweet prize package, but it was cool because it was on the internet and, on social media. Those kids live on social media nowadays, and it was just cool to see. And
that's brilliant. I mean, that's exactly what needs to happen, because things that aren't willing to adapt and be forward leaning, they go away, because I mean, that's the thing, like the world changes, like as much as we don't want it to sometimes, and we want to hold on to what we care about and the way we like things, like the thing evolves and things change. And if you don't change wings with it, then you get left behind. So kudos to you guys for doing that. That's awesome. And I hope that, we see more stuff like that, because you're right. That is how, we're going to connect with people moving forward, is through the internet, whether we like it or not. That's going to be the way.
Unfortunately, that is, the sad truth is that, I would much rather prefer to, sit down with you guys, talk about calls, talk about these calls. It's just, those guys don't have that, or, I get messages every day. I'm like, hey, how can I improve my calling? I love that, but it's like, man, there'd be the internet is such a great and a great place, but also just it sucks because you're like, man, I just hear it. I hear him calling. I'm like, man, if I were sitting there right in front of you, it would be 10 times more helpful than me listening to it. Which, I mean, I'll help anybody that sends it, but it's like, it just is like one of those, it's one of those love-hate relationships, and like you said, man, it's like maybe the reason contest calling might have gone downhill or anything like that is because a lot of guys that are stuck in the old ways that aren't willing to adapt to new styles or new ways. That might be one of those reasons.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely the block and just the challenges of like you said, money and whatnot. But we held you way longer than what we thought. We're at about an hour and 10 with you, and I just want to say thanks again for taking the time and congrats. And I'm excited to follow you, the next couple of years and see if you can get this done. And I know, once you get your mind right, like you have it, and sitting there with Kelly and everyone else down there, I think you're gonna be a force to deal with these next couple of years, and it's exciting on our end to be able to follow you.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you guys, having me on and talking about it. Hopefully, I know I rambled on a little bit about some of the negatives of contest calling and positives, and hopefully it's something we all can get into or change. And but no, I really, really appreciate you guys having me on here, and I appreciate the kind words. Absolutely. Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure. And we want to make sure that everyone knows that if they want to check you out over on Instagram, they can do that. _ Kile Jones. It's Kile Jones. Check him out on Instagram. You can see a picture of him holding that Job's decoy that we've been talking about so much on this episode. So congratulations again, man. Thanks for the time. And good luck with the rest of your hunting season. And we're looking forward to seeing you defend the title up here in 2019.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Want to take a minute just to thank Kyle again for carving out some time and joining us to talk about the win. And, I got to say, Dan, I think probably one of my biggest disappointments after listening to that conversation again is I've been to the Maryland show once. I don't think you've ever been. And it's been a couple years since I've been there. And I planned to go this past year, but just coaching my kids basketball interfered with it on Saturday, and on Sunday it was kind of like the show's over. So, it's 2 hours each way for me to get there, and I'm kind of disappointed because I want to go, and I'd love to actually be in the house to watch the World Championship finals. And I need to check off that box, but I feel like we need to get there as HP and meet a lot of people and get a lot of content for the show.
Yeah, I think we need to etch that weekend out for 2019. Have Kyle back on. I think that'd be cool as he tries to defend the title. I think it'll be going on social media and reading some of the different platforms, and some people said that they're a note off here or there, and could have been right up with him winning or whatever you want to read, and he brought the championship home. So next year's going to be a good one because there's still guys fighting for their first or second or third, and he's not going to give it up easy. And I know, working down there with Kelly and other world champs in the same building, I think he's going to be ready. He'll definitely be ready.
Yeah, and I also think that as he was talking about his preparation and working with Kelly, I was literally having flashbacks back to our interview with Kelly and hearing him say, yeah. I break it down to the intro and I perfect the intro. And once that's perfected, then I move to the transition and I perfect the transition. And I was like, wow, that sounds like I'm hearing the same thing, 4 years later from another world champion. So clearly there's something to that. And these guys got it figured out, but yeah.
And awesome. It was, one thing that stuck out to me was And I never thought about it, but Kelly brought a good point that as a judge, you could be really knocked off your feet by just the warm up.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that, the mental side of really nailing your warm up, which who really would have thought of that? Are you getting judged on a warm up or are you getting judged on a routine? Well, that warm up is going to perk up some ears if you really hit what you want to hit. So, that's just something that, probably backstage the judges talk about that a lot of people might not hear. And it's kind of cool to hear that side of it.
Yeah. And another thing that's interesting is, again, I haven't been to a ton of contests and I listened to, I've watched some on YouTube and live stream them when they're available and things like that. But I don't know if I've ever seen anyone pass on the warm up. Could you imagine that though? Like, have you seen it where they're like, caller, would you like warm up? They're like, no, I'm good. And just, just like tear into it right off the bat. That is something that would get the judge's attention, I bet you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've never seen it, but I'm sure it's happened somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. But to do it on the world stage, that'd be pretty gutsy.
No, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine getting up there and going through that. I don't know, just the weight, just a little bit of nerves. Usually if I give a speech or something, I'll get a little bit of nerves, and that's usually right in the throat. So when you're, that's 100%. I could never be a rock star, I guess.
Yeah, public speaking and stuff isn't an issue for me, but I do get nervous, oddly enough, when I'm like calling to ducks and things like that, particularly when it's the first one of the morning, because it's like, I don't have that warm up, and I'm just like, it's like sometimes it just doesn't sound as good as I wish it would or whatever, and maybe I hadn't blown the call in a while kind of thing. But then, that typically goes away. And I'm sure it's just like anything. You get up there, you get that little bit of nerves, but as soon as you cut into it for the first time, that probably goes away and you just do your thing,
Right.
So, well, what do you think, man? We're ever closer to our Kansas trip. It's going to be like one more episode, right? And then we'll have Kansas, or two more, and then we'll have Kansas stuff.
No, one more, because it'll be a week and a half, and then we'll leave that Thursday. Because this is Tuesday. This won't be out till Monday. That's not that Thursday, but the following Thursday.
Yeah, so we'll do one more the week after Thanksgiving, and then it'll be
go time.
It'll be Kansas material, so that'll be cool. Looking forward to doing that. And
you want to know something that was really weird this year? I spent about 3 hours total archery hunting. And that was different for me.
Yeah, that's different.
I almost got it done too.
Yeah, well,
40 yards on a nice 10-point.
I've spent probably 8 hours in a deer stand the last 2 days, and it's not been great. Haven't seen a lot of deer, not a lot in range, But I'm about to shift gears and focus more on duck hunting because.
When do you guys come in?
We come in the day before Thanksgiving for 2 weeks, and then it goes out for 2 weeks, and then mid-December comes back in and goes through the end of January.
I wish we had that.
Yeah. It actually works out really well as an outdoorsman in Virginia because if you want to be a bow hunter, you can, or a deer hunter in general, you can pursue deer, hunt hard through the rut, and really not miss any duck hunting opportunities or goose hunting. So it sets up very well, and that's probably the only reason I still archery hunt at all. If it was like an overlap, I would not archery hunt at all.
Yeah.
Kind of like you. So anyway.
Yeah, it was different for me. I usually spend a couple Saturdays or take some vacation time, but with our trips coming up, it's just ducks are number one. Ducks and geese.
Yes, sir.
And that's all right.
Let's wrap this up. You got anything else you want to add? One more thing?
No, I think I'm good.
Oh, okay. Well, on that note, take a minute here to thank Lifetime Decoys, Dunn Sporting Goods, Lucky Duck, 737 Duck and Goose Calls, Gunner Kennels, Onyx Hunt, Camp Chef and Black Rifle Coffee Company. Make sure you head over to the HP Outdoors website, check out the discount page, see how you can save some cash on a couple of those sponsor items. And as we always say, please support the companies that support us. So on that note, let's go ahead and put a bow on it. All right, hopefully you enjoyed our discussion with the 2018 World Goose Calling Champion, Kile Jones. We appreciate him stopping by the show, and we appreciate you tuning into this week's episode. Dan and I will be back with you next week. Brand new content. If you can't wait till then, make sure you head over to iTunes, check out the old content, give us 5-star ratings and reviews. We appreciate that. Until next week, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.